Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to our /EntitledPeople, where people are so petty they call the police when they don't get what they want. Guys, you know the drill. It's gonna be another crazy episode, so strap yourselves in, get comfy, and hey, don't shake your heads too hard. Subscribe if you haven't, and the email link to share stories is gonna be right here. So, a little background first. I'm a chef at a very large restaurant in a major city. Multiple bars, dining rooms, private event spaces, the whole works. I work BOH, which stands for back of house in the industry. We usually don't talk to customers unless we want to, for a reason. I'm an introvert and shy, unless I feel like I'm in my element, like the kitchen. So I've been a chef for more than a decade, and I've spoken to what I guess is now my fourth guest. It's not my thing. That's why managers exist. The idea of talking to people gives me anxiety. Did they not like something? Was it cooked poorly? Did it make them nauseous? Did it taste bad? Etc. And then today happened. I get a call to the kitchen that a guest wanted to speak to me. I responded, "Find a manager," and their reply was, "They want to see the chef." Now, no matter how many times I repeat this, they said the guest wants to speak to the chef in person. Reluctantly, I make the way to where they were, only to be told to wait there because the guest had gone to the bathroom. When they finally came back, the one guest just looked at me. I questioned it and asked, "How was everything?" She then slowly took a deep breath, and she held up 2 thumbs up. I just stood there, and she replied, "Everything was great, and that's really good for you, because I'm the kind of person who leaves bad reviews and comments and gets people fired." Now at that, I just smiled lightheartedly, and then she said, "I've done it before, and I have proof. Today's your lucky day that you've impressed me." I simply thanked her for her visit and went back to the kitchen. I never want to speak to a guest again. Guys, what makes people feel that entitled? Yeah, you're lucky my opinion of your cooking was a good one, because if my opinion of how you cooked the food was bad, you might have been fired. Like, yeah, okay there, Karen. So she basically called OP away from his job to tell him that the food is good, and to tell him his job was safe. Like, it sounds like OP was talking to a narcissist. Guys, I've read literally dozens and dozens of these stories, and people still surprise me with their behavior. Like, what a weird compliment. What do you even say to that? Okay, so I just bought a camper trailer not too long ago. It was pretty old, so I repainted it and fixed it up. It doesn't look new, but it's pretty darn good, and I plan to take it camping soon. I had it hitched up to my SUV because I was taking it to a friend's house a ways away, and thought it would be the perfect time to test spending the night in it away from home. I stop at a gas station to gas up and buy some snacks. When I come out, there was a woman and her young son trying to look into the window of my trailer. I asked them what they were doing, and the lady gives me a sour look before saying, "My son likes your trailer," so I said he could check it out, but the door is locked. I say to her, yeah, the door's locked. You don't just try to enter someone else's trailer. That's basically the same thing as trying to walk into someone's house." Hearing this, the Karen crosses her arms and says, "I just want to look around. Open the door and let us in." I tell her, "Yeah, no, you gotta go away. Please don't bother me again." At this point, her little crotch goblin starts crying and pulling on her shirt saying, "Mommy, but I want to see inside." Now mind you, this kid looked like he was 7 or 8 years old. I just start laughing because this situation sounds so much like the other Reddit stories I listen to almost daily. Karen gets angry and she yells, "What's so funny? Let us in the camper right now." I then wiped a tear from my eye and said, "I'm laughing because this is the most stereotypical situation I've ever seen in person, of a Karen trying to act entitled to someone else's property just because their brat wants it." She seemed to recognize what it meant when I called her Karen, because her eye twitched and she scrunched up her face. She then grabs her crying kid and drags him away by his arm. All the while, I'm still laughing. She then gets into her crappy Honda Civic and she gives me the finger. I just waved with a grin as she drove away. So, she ended up calling the effing police on me. I didn't notice, but I guess when I denied her entry to my camper, Karen actually wrote down my SUV's license plate number, and she called the cops. I'd gotten home Sunday morning and all was peaceful until yesterday afternoon. So yesterday, I get a knock on the door around 3 p.m., and I met with a female police officer. She was there to speak to me regarding my stolen camper. Apparently, she had been there last week when I wasn't home. To be fair, she was not judgmental in any way of me. In fact, she outright stated that she was just following up on a report that I'd stolen and repainted a camper. I knew my home paint job was nothing special, but I didn't think it was that obvious. I had to explain to the officer that I had a handwritten receipt of the purchase because the previous owner, a retired old man, had lost the title due to the trailer having sat in the barn for so long. We had to call up the previous owner to confirm this. He then met with us at the station. The police then went through some DMV records and found that it was in his name as the previous owner, so we were all good on that. But I've been told to avoid taking the camper out again until I get the title refiled, which I'm going to attempt as soon as I can. I then asked the officer about the Karen who reported me, and then told her what happened and where it happened, and she said she'll look into it. But since it happened in the next county over, it'll be a long shot. So yeah, Karen might have gotten off scot-free by calling in as a concerned citizen. Either way, I'm not gonna bother to find out anything else. Wow guys, it sucks that some people are just that petty. Calling the police to inconvenience others' lives just because they don't allow you to look inside their camper? I don't even know what to say to that. I wonder how many other false reports she's called on others. And the fact that she got away scot-free upsets me. It really does. A couple moved in next door a few months back, and they're really nice. They've always helped out in the community, and they were all around nice people. They also throw really nice pool parties for everybody in the neighborhood. So we had this thing where every 2 weeks or so, we'd all get together for a party, and they had a really nice yard, so everybody looked forward to their turn. The husband traveled for work quite often, and his wife always wanted to go with. So me being right next door, they asked someone to watch their house while they were gone. They knew me, and we were friendly with one another, and they knew I was trying to save up for a car, so they offered me some money to house it while they were gone. Enter the entitled family. When they first arrived, they got on everyone's nerves by calling the HOA on almost every house on the block. Their kids, who were teenagers, are even worse. They were rarely invited to pool parties. For this reason, they were constantly sneaking into people's yards to play as their house didn't have a pool. They were always caught though, and the police were called several times, but they always worked their way out of it. Anyway, the nice couple from before called me and asked me to house sit for them. They said they were leaving in a few days and they'd be gone for 3 days. I accepted, and the first day went pretty smoothly. On the second day, as I was cleaning the house, I noticed the backyard was messed up, but I distinctly remembered it was clean the night before. It looked like someone had thrown a party there, so I checked the cameras, and it turns out the entitled couple and their kids went into the yard when I wasn't there. The nice couple would be gone for another day, so I had a great idea to dump an excessive amount of chlorine into the water. For those of you who don't know, pool chlorine at high amounts can cause irritation, burns, irritated eyes, etc., etc. I assumed the entitled mom and company would return that day, and if they didn't, the chlorine would just evaporate out of the water by the time the nice couple would be back, so no harm would be done. I was right. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm sitting inside when I see the parents boosting their kids over the gate and then climbing over themselves. They were all really hyped about being able to do whatever they wanted, and all of them but the father jumped right in. I then hear a splash, and it only took a moment, but they were all screaming and complaining about their eyes and skin burning. I just burst out laughing, loud enough for them to hear outside, and their bright red faces suddenly paled. They all booked it out of there so fast that they should have tried to join the Olympic track team. The police were called, and it took them a while, but they arrived a little after the nice couple got back. When the couple got home, I showed them the security footage and told them what I'd done. Pretty soon, they were laughing right along with me. The police then arrive at the house, and I repeat the process and showed them the neighbors hopping the fence. They go over to the house and question the entitled family, and they lie their asses off, even though the cops can probably see the chlorine effects all over them. They then ask if the nice couple want to press charges, and the guy grins and says, absolutely. Guys, before reading all of these entitled stories, I had no idea how common it was for neighbors to just break into other people's yards to use the pool. And now maybe that family's gonna think twice about breaking into other people's yards. I absolutely love how that family ends up getting charged in the end though. Like, talk about ultimate insult to injury. So on this night, my husband and I went out for a quiet dinner. We were sitting at our table when 2 women with 3 kids sat at a table near us. 2 of the kids, who are boys, looked about 4 or 5 years old, while the girl looked to be around 12, and she was on her phone most of the time. The 2 young boys then start running rampant in the restaurant, while their moms just sip the cocktails unbothered. They were literally playing tag inside the restaurant. One of the boys then approaches our table with his hands out, and I can tell he's gonna try to touch my food. I then lift up my plate and say, "No, please don't touch it." The kid just laughs at me, and then he leaves to run another lap around the room with his brother. I then see the two women watching this happening, but pretending to not be aware. My husband's not looking too pleased at this point because he predicts a repeat, and that's exactly what happens. The kids are running around trying to grab food from everybody else's plate, and then they make their way back to our table, and he does the same thing again. The kid turns to my plate, and this time I swat his hand away. Lightly, not at all forcefully. The kid then starts crying because I won't let him touch my food. The mom hears her son crying, and suddenly, she's all concerned, and then she blurts out, "That was so mean. He's not doing anything wrong. Why did you hit him?" I then say to her, "Excuse me? I don't want anyone else's hands in my food. This is a public restaurant." The mom then tells me, "He's just a kid. It's not a big deal." I tell her it is a big deal. I and everyone else in this restaurant are not interested in having him touch my food. Please mind your children. At this point, she's about to say something more, but the server tactfully brought their food and engaged them in conversation. The two women just kept staring at me the whole meal. As soon as the woman blurts out that her kids aren't doing anything wrong, I would have just walked up to her plate of food and started grabbing handfuls of whatever she ordered, making eye contact and saying, "Really, ma'am, nothing is wrong?" It's crazy how some parents don't see anything wrong with letting their kids run around in a restaurant where everyone's trying to eat. So this literally just happened. For some background, I live in a council estate in the UK. If you've ever been in one, then you'll know we're all jammed in here like sardines, especially when it comes to parking, with most of it being roadside. They're not bad places to live, but if you have more than one car, chances are that you'll be parking it on the roof. Anyway, we have a mix of bought houses among us mere commoners. One such fancy pants lives across the road a couple of houses up, complete with their own 2-car driveway. Posh, I know. Well, me and my partner have recently had a baby, so mother-in-law's been coming by a lot for more visits, as you can imagine. Usually she parks outside of our home on the road, like we do. But as we're not kings of the road, sometimes those spaces aren't available. So she parked partially across the road from the aforementioned Karen's driveway. Now this is in no way illegal, and pretty much every house on the street with a drive has a car parked across the road, with no issues. Not these folks. Oh my lordy. So we've had several notes left on her car with passive-aggressive messages, such as, "We'll try not to hit your car." And another note like, "If you have no road awareness, you probably don't know what you're doing is illegal, so I suggest you move now." And the notes are always signed, "You're fed up neighbors." So we've tried to explain to them that it's not illegal to park across the road, and also that if they simply just come to the door and ask us, we would move as soon as it was possible. But no, they started petty, so the saga continued. Well, Milady of the driveway came to my home, banging on the door like police with an arrest warrant, scaring the pants off our little girl, who I then had to take to the door screaming her pants off, only to be comforted by more screaming from our friendly neighborhood correspondents. My mother-in-law was not having it, and she comes to the door to tell her off because of her attitude, stating that she could have just asked us nicely instead of yelling at a mom and her baby who have nothing to do with it. This resulted in a tirade of threats. Long story short, she screamed that she was phoning the police and we would be fined and arrested for parking on her property. Someone should have probably told them that their property barrier doesn't include public roads opposite the property. I can't wait for police to get here and see that parking on her drive actually meant being parked on the opposite side of the road. So, fellow users, according to my charming neighbors, about half the UK population better move their cars before the po-po come and get ya. So as you can probably guess, yes, the driveway overlords did indeed phone the police. After her threats, we waited around for my mother-in-law to be shipped away to jail for committing the ultimate crime, parking on a public street. I know, please try to hold judgment. However, like most close-knit streets, our other neighbors came out to see what the fuss was about, and oh boy did we get the gossip. So it turns out that we aren't the only people she's complained about. Social caretakers for the elderly, visitors for other houses, council workers, and even people who live on the street have all received notes and stern warnings from our delightful neighbors about parking on her property. Although, we were the lucky ones who finally pushed them over the edge. Well, they finally arrived. We can see their house from our window, so it was prime viewing. Milady of the driveway comes running out of her house, clutching a mug of what I can only guess is tears of orphan children. They went inside her house and closed the door, so we waited, praying, hoping that they would come across to get our side of the story. Well, our wish was granted, but let me tell you, it was so much sweeter than we could have imagined. After watching the officer poke his head out the door like a meerkat trying to figure out where the car was that's blocking the driveway, she gave him a hand and pointed to my mother-in-law's car parked across the street. Now this poor fella looked more confused than a drunk with a calculator. He eventually went back inside before heading over to our house, and that's where the real fun began. The officer comes to our door and we greet him with a customary, "Hi, what can we do for you, officer?" The officer says, "Good morning. So we received a complaint about a car from this property blocking a driveway." Mother-in-law says, "Hey there, we've been expecting you." Officer asked, "Are you the resident here?" Mother-in-law says, "No, my son and daughter-in-law are, but that's my car that's been reported, the silver one across the street from their house." Officer says, "So I'm having trouble understanding the issue. Was your car parked across their driveway on their property?" Mother-in-law tells him, "Nope, it's been parked in the same space since I got here." Officer tells her, "Well, your neighbor's claiming that you blocked their car in their driveway and you were trespassing." Mother-in-law says, "Oh, we know. She's been leaving notes on cars and other cars in the street. She's been claiming that the entire section of the road is part of her personal driveway. You can ask the other neighbors." What kind of notes? Has she asked you to move?" I tell him, kind of. She's told us and the rest of the neighbors that they would try not to hit our cars. Officer asked, "What do you mean?" She's been accusing us of parking in her driveway across the street from her house on the public road. I even have a photo of where the car was parked a few hours ago. I then show the officer the photo, making sure to point out the time and date it was taken, and he just shook his head. He asked if there's anything else he should know before dealing with the matter. We were more than happy to fill him in on how she came to my door stomping her feet in disapproval, throwing all the aggressive, condescending, "It's illegal, sweethearts," that she could our way. He then asked if we felt threatened, and I said no, but I wasn't happy that she was yelling at me while I was holding my baby. He said he understood, and we encouraged him to talk to the neighbors too, to get a full picture of what's going on. So that's exactly what he did. And Jesus, Mary, and the wee donkey, it was so much worse than what I thought. For them. So on our street, news travels fast. We're gossipy people. We even have our own street WhatsApp group. The officer did in fact make his way down the doors, and they were all more than happy to tell their stories. It turned out that not only had they been harassing people for parking near their home, but they had also been witnessed exiting their car looking a little wobbly. Wobbly as in drunk as a fart. One can only assume this is why he needs 20 plus feet to reverse into his drive. However, the best part was when the officer comes back to our house to wrap up. So when the officer asked her about our trespassing on her property, she told the police officer that I trained my cat to crap in her plant pots. My huge, fluffy, and attitude-filled kitty had been having his morning poop in her plants. His name is Stanford, and he's renowned in our street for being a sassy little dickhead, sitting on top of cars, sneaking into people's houses, and sleeping on their beds, and of course, tormenting dogs. And I've never been prouder of him. In the end, the officer went back to her house, and from what we can tell, he told her to stop being like that, and if they were caught drunk driving, they would be arrested. Any more notes are coming to people's doors, and they could be charged with harassment due to the volume and the nature of the event. Essentially, they were told to get a grip, and the officer went off to attend actual crimes. Now the neighbor parks across the street from his driveway in protest, and the rest of the street accommodates by parking directly in front and behind him, blocking him in, as is our right by law. I hope my cat held eye contact while he was pooping on your plants. Guys, that is so weird how some people are like that. Like, directly in front of your house, I can kind of understand how some people treat that as their property. But for the Karen neighbor to completely police the whole road and claim parking across the street as her own is a little ridiculous. Talk about being super duper entitled. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our / entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the stories today. If you did, leave a thumbs up. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'll link it right here. A Karen trespasses on Opie's property and puts his family in danger. And she gets taught a lesson she'll never forget. Check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.